So as discussed the previous day, the process of like fertilization takes place within the fallopian tube. Now within the fallopian tube, you are going to find that right there in the isthmus and the ampulla junction, that particular point is where we find that the fertilization is taking place, and then slowly the zygote develops, and then it keeps on moving. Means like the from the zygote, the embryo develops slowly, and then it moves down into the placenta for the into the uterus for the implantation stage. Now during that entire time, the process of embryogenesis is going on, and embryogenesis is actually the way of development of each and every of those multicellular structure from the single cell zygote. Now the zygote in the first day, means the first entire day of the gestation period, the zygote develops slowly, and we need to keep in mind that the zona pellucida layer and the entire membrane, it actually remains intact during this entire period of time. So thus this entire structure is what within this like the membrane, we are going to see the development of the cell is taking place. So the outer membrane is there, and the inner cell, it keeps on dividing from like day one. After the completion of day one, the first two cell structures is actually going to be found. This is what is known as the embryo, the early embryo, and this stage is actually followed by another division that also takes around 24 hours. So in day 2, we are going to find this 4 cell structure is there. After that, the cell actually divides rapidly and form this 8 to 16 cell structure, which is called the morula. This is the first formation of the morula, and the day 3, end of day 3, we are going to find this thing to happen. And it's actually a stage where we find that the number of cells are in this range of 8. Then it keeps on dividing and then forms into a 16 cell structure, 32 cell structure, like that. Now this entire stage, as the morula, as it goes by the name of morula, now the morula will actually enter a phase called the compaction or compacting of the morula. During that entire stage, during this entire stage, all these cells will actually undergo rearrangement, and by rearrangement, actually they all arrange themselves in a outer membrane called the trophoblast membrane. And then the inner there is a cell mass, means there is an inner cell mass, a large amount of cell clustered together. If you can see, it's actually shown right here in this particular stage, like the differentiation is taking place, which is like the outer cell and the inner cell, they actually distinguish themselves. This is the morula stage. Okay, and we can see that the outer cell is actually an outer lining is forming, and then there is an inner lining also forming, plus there is a formation of cavity right there at the center. This cavity is not going to be completely empty, but rather filled with a little fluid called the a blastocele is actually, it is called, this cavity. Within that, a little bit of fluid can be found, and then we are going to find that the inner cell mass is created right there in this chamber, means within this entire cavity. And the outer boundary is like this hollow cavity ball like structure that we see. This outer boundary is made up of the cells which are called the trophoblast. Now once this actually structure it forms, we call this structure, or it's actually called the blastula. So from the morula, it has transformed into the blastula, and once the blastula has fully formed, it can be a multicellular structure like of 32 cells or even more. So this structure, it actually is like where we see that the zona pellucida membrane, it actually ruptures, and then from within this zona pellucida, we find this entire structure is actually now coming out. This blastula comes out of the zona pellucida. Until this time, the zona pellucida membrane, it remains, and it is actually the protective layer also, it acting as a protective layer for it. Once that blastula is properly released, the blastula will now already has traveled the entirety of the fallopian tube, has and now gone into the uterine region. So there it actually, the stage of the implantation will take place. Okay, now let me show you what actually happens. Okay, unfortunately this is arranged slightly differently, though I'll use this slide to explain now also and later on also. So what we are going to find here is that the cell is actually now transforming into this hollow ball, the blastula. So the blastula, as I've said, it actually has this outer trophoblast. You can see it's like a hollow ball, and then the inner cell mass will be there in one of the corner. Now once the structure is formed, it actually goes there, as you can see in this structure. Wait, so as you can see, this entire structure has gone and bound with the, like, it actually found a bonding with the endometrium wall of the uterus. So once the bonding is actually taking place, so what is going to happen is the trophoblast is going to, means the outer membrane, the trophoblast is going to uh, like penetrate the entire endometrium, okay, forming this finger like projections. This finger like projection, this is actually the outer wall of the trophoblast. This is a quite like cross section of a quite matured structure, but still the same thing actually happen at the very instance of its implanting itself onto the wall. So what actually happens is the trophoblasts, they just keep on penetrating inside the endometrium, forming this finger-like projections called the chorionic villi. And this chorionic villi is actually going to adhere together with the cells, or will make a full contact with the cells of the uh, endometrium. Now those cells, that particular layer with which actually the main interaction is taking place, it's called the decidua, okay, the decidua basalis. And with that decidua basalis, what we are going to find is that the trophoblast, sometimes even they actually penetrate the entire decidua basalis and goes inside. But the main target is that within this decidua basalis there will be spiral blood capillaries of the mother. All right. So these spiral blood capillaries that are there, even they are called the spiral arteries. So the spiral arteries are actually the main connection that it is to form. So what happens is this trophoblast, after it like comes in contact with the spiral artery, as you can see right here, this is the spiral artery with which the trophoblast has made a connection. Now this layer, it is going to form the placenta. This entire layer is what is going to be now considered as the placenta. All right. And the placenta is actually has two sides, one the mother side, and the second one is the side of the fetus itself. So the fetus side is mainly composed of the chorionic villi, that is there, and the mother side is mainly the decidual layer, and with which we find that the spiral arteries of the mother is actually there inside. Now during that entire period of time of the gestation, where like the fetus is going to grow inside the uterus of the mother, now during that time we are going to find that inside this the fetal like placenta, we are going to find that within this entire chorionic villis that are formed, inside them we can find the fetal capillaries are present, because after all the exchange of the nutrient and the waste material with that of the mother and the fetus is going to take place with the help of the blood itself, right? But these blood capillaries are never coming in contact with each other, because there has to be a boundary, there has to be a physiological barrier. Otherwise there is a very good chance that the immune system of the mother will attack the fetus and will destroy it, because immune system always consider anything out other than the body and other than this own body as a antigen and destroy itself. So a fetus growing there will be considered as a antigen. It will be considered as a foreign body and will be completely killed, right? So for that particular like to prevent that thing to happen, so we have seen that actually this placenta it develops, so the blood doesn't come in contact with each other at all, means the blood of the mother and the blood of the fetus means completely detached. But the exchange of the nutrients and the exchange of the waste material, even the respiratory gases and everything, it is going to take place via this placental barrier, right? So once it happens, we find that the placental barrier is doing all the exchange and whatever is necessary. Plus you can notice one thing here, this thing is written as the M5 is written here, and the DC, these are actually the protective immune cells of that of the fetus, okay. M5 actually it represents the macrophages, and the DC means the dendritic cells. Those are actually the first line of defense for the fetus, means even after whatever nutrient is getting inside, they may carry something unwanted, so these things are ready to clean that out. Even unwanted cells or any other unwanted like dead cells or whatever has been formed there, whatever may be the reason, everything will be like destroyed by this particular immune cells of the fetus, right? And then finally, whatever nutrients are there, they will be exchanged through and throughout. And finally, the fetal will actually take all the nutrients and all and will grow. Now, once that happens, actually, we are going to find that the fetus is now going to transform and going to grow like bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and finally the baby will be born. But here is one thing that will happen at the time of after placenta formation, means at the time when the implantation has taken place, the entire blastula will actually undergo one change. The blastula will now transform into a structure called the gastrula. Okay, and the gastrula formation is actually due to this gastrulation stage. You can see right here, there is actually the inward cell growth, or due to large cell division, continuous division on the inward side, it actually creates this invagination type of structure right there, an invagination type of shape, and that invagination proceed for like continue inside, forming this inner cavity. You can see right there is a formation of a cavity with another cavity right there. All right, now within this cavity will develop the mesodermal layer. This inner cavity is going to be the endoderm layer, and this outer ring that is there is actually going to be the ectoderm. This three ring structure is actually these three rings of cells that are there. They are the one responsible for development of different parts of the body. Okay, like the ectoderm is responsible for the formation of the skin, the bone, the brain, all these things. The endoderm is responsible for formation of the all the internal organs, and the mesoderm is responsible for formation of the muscles and the inner tissues and all. So all this structure, its development and everything will take place from after the formation of this gastrula, and is a very crucial step. Plus, one more thing has to be said here is like the blastopore, which is the opening, the cavity opening of this gastrula that you're seeing here, like which is formed right there at this particular location. Even here also you can see it's marked already. So this blastopore, the development of the blastopore, since we are a chordate organism, so our blastopore usually transform into the anus. Okay, and due to that we call that we are deuterostome. There is actually another type of organism that exists which is called the protostome, where the blastula or the blastopore actually, sorry, it actually develops into the mouth. All right, so what happens is in our case the blastopore actually becomes the anus, and right this location is where the cells actually transform into the mouth. In case of protostome, it is exactly the opposite. So we are deuterostome type of organism, and this entire division and the differentiation, it occurs beyond, like after the gastrula stage, and then after that the fetus keeps on growing as it is supposed to, and the continue development takes place for the month, like 9 month period of time, and after that the main process of parturition begins, where the baby is delivered. So that will be